shiznit, best little wrestling podcast in the business. Your host BT, and all his guests. You'll never know who he'll have next. Shooting the shiznit, best little wrestling podcast in the business. Shooting the shiznit.
All right. We're live from 304 Studios in Jonesboro, Arkansas. This is an STSPOD.CLUB production. This is 5-minute time limit, and we have Duchess of New Jersey on as our first ever guest. 5-minute time limit, and Duchess,
good evening.
got 5 minutes.
I got 5 whole minutes. I'm doing all right. How are you tonight, sir?
Doing good. We're
Fabulous.
excited to see how many people that show up to listen to us chat. If not, we'll got 4 or 5 people waiting in the waiting room. At least we'll get 20 minutes worth.
I think that's awesome. What a great idea.
So tell us about your podcast, and then me and you will talk a little bit about wrestling.
Sounds like a plan. Okay, so I am the second mic on the Boomer Bunker podcast with John Domingo. Currently, we record our live stream Wednesday nights, and then we drop it as a podcast. So you can participate live or just listen to us. And we have a great old time. We talk politics, we talk current events, pop, all kinds of cool stuff. So if you're into checking us out, please, we encourage you to stop by. We're on all the socials, all that fun stuff. BoomerBunker.com. You can find us.
My effort timer's not working, so I'll have to do another timer here. So.
Oh, no. Do I get an extra 5 minutes? That's
what
awesome.
happens when it's the first time you ever done anything.
That's okay.
So you said y'all kind of do politics. What all, do you get, because I watched it one night, y'all were right there during the Trump, when Trump got assassinated, which I think, well, he didn't get assassinated. Assassinated him, at least.
They tried,
Yeah. Y'all were right in the middle of that. Is that kind of the stuff that y'all do?
There is a lot of politics. It's also in the midst of election season. We've got another few weeks really until the election. So a lot of the current events are based around politics. We tend to lean a little more to the right. I'm not as super conservative. John has a little bit stronger views, but that's it makes it fun. It makes a good discussion. I like to think I'm a little more moderate. But I'm I'm open to hearing a lot of different views, but I tend to be slightly more righty than lefty. But, we do try to encourage people to share their views, and we like hearing from all sides, really. It's good. It's good discussion, and it's good to talk about it. And it's sad to see that people get so divisive over politics. Sometimes it's good to hash it out. And do we poke fun at people? Yes, but we also poke fun at the Republicans just as much as the Democrats. So they're all up for grabs at this point.
I've told you this before. I think you and John do a fantastic job, but I'm not a political person. I don't do politics. So it's like I can listen to 3 episodes in a row and then I'm good for another 4 weeks. and then I can go back and when it's thick into politics, I vote. But It's just one of those things where I've always thought, and I know this has nothing to do with wrestling, but I've always thought politics was kind of like religion. And I know no one else thinks this but me, that it's a private thing and it's none of no one's damn business. What I think when it comes to politics, and no one really cares. So that's the main thing.
That's true.
But, let's talk about wrestling. So
sounds like a plan.
We have talked to each other before on Twitter, and then I had sent you a video, but it was of your favorite wrestler. You told me. What do you remember about watching back in the day, professional wrestling back in the day?
So I grew up with it more back in the day, in the 1900s, the 80s wrestling. So it was all like Superfly Snuka. My favorite is Roddy Piper. Love him forever. And of course, like Hulk Hogan, Iron Sheik, just all of that was fantastic. Now, my brother and my dad were super into it, so I got kind of pulled into it. But also another favorite of mine was Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff, because
wow,
he was fabulous. And then of course like Macho Man, and how did you not love Miss Elizabeth, because she was so beautiful, and then you Jimmy Hart and all the craziness. So the very comical part of wrestling is what I really enjoyed. And then I kind of drifted away from it, I guess, after the 80s. So I see it every once in a while, but I'm not, I know the names, but I don't follow it. It's amazing WrestleMania is still going on, or whatever it's called now. It's fantastic. People are just hanging in there for it.
I was thinking about this. So I was laughing about, and I'm going crazy directions tonight. I sent someone a text today that Disney people really kind of creep me out. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry, my friends that are into Disney. Then I think about me in my wrestling,
right?
And wrestling stuff, and I'm going to be 58 this year, and I still watch wrestling. Do you think you quit watching wrestling because you grew up? Because some people tell me that.
I don't know. I can see at one point one of my daughters was very into it. So, and I think it's an entertainment, and if it catches you, you stick with it. And I think at the time when I drifted off, I was like 18. I was just like got out of high school, and a lot of things changed, and I was out on my own. So like I was more focused on going out more than, staying in and watching wrestling. And not to disparage it, that's just where I was at the time, a little bit of a party girl. So there wasn't so much wrestling watching. I kind of drifted from it. But when they bring the old guys back, or when you see like tribute videos and stuff like that, that kind of tugs at my heartstrings a little, because I'm like, oh, I remember that. I remember going to see them play like
all right, Duchess,
locally.
I hate to do this, Stevie. Here you go.
Your time is up.
Bye. Hey, John.
John Jamingo. How the hell are you, John? Your timer has started. You got 5 minutes. She just told about your podcast. So I want to ask you a question real quick. You were one of the very few guys that I was listening to podcasts, started listening about on a regular basis about 7 years ago, I guess. And every time I've had a technical problem, or I want you to listen to something and try to fix it, you've always been there to do it. You always tell me the first time is free, but it's like you're a drug man or something. But my question is, where's your wrestling? Because you talked about shoot and work. Where's your wrestling stuff come from?
Well, kind of the same as Duchess. I grew up with, watching, I don't know I can't remember who the wrestler was that dropped Richard Belzer on his head.
That was Hogan did that. Yeah.
Okay, Hogan did that. And then you had when Andy Kaufman was on Letterman, and that guy smacked the taste out of his mouth. Right. And he come in. And so, that's when I watched all the stuff. The first time I ever saw Hulk Hogan was in the Rocky movie. I didn't know who he was until he was Thunder Lips in the Rocky movie. So also I was in the elevator business in the mid 80s all the way up until 2012. And I don't know if anybody knows this, but King Kong Bundy was in the elevator. He was an elevator helper. He was an apprentice. His real name is Chris. And when he retired from wrestling, he lived right across the street from one of my friends in high school. So he lived in the South Jersey area, and that's where he came from. And one of the mechanics that I worked for would talk about Chris. Chris, his helper was Chris.
Right.
And I was like, who's Chris? And he goes, King Kong Bundy. I said, wait a minute. Because he's huge. And, a lot of times in the elevator business, you got to get in tight spots. And listen, I'm a big guy myself, but I said, you actually let this guy step on top of an elevator with you? I'm afraid for that guy to fall right through the cab. He was huge. But
since you were in the elevator, which I would think would be the greatest podcast ever, which you may be something you're going to plan to do, I've thought about doing one because I worked hotel for 5 years, and I've met some famous people. I met some crazy people. I met some hookers. I met all kinds. Did you ever meet any other wrestlers? Did they get in your elevator? Or did you even know who they were at the time?
The only one time I got Rodney Pete, Philadelphia Eagles quarterback, and Holly Robinson Pete, they were stuck in an elevator. I got them out. I saw Cher, and I also saw Ozzy Osbourne. As I was back then, they had payphones. You would go to the payphone to call the office, and I was going to the payphone, and somebody was. I'm looking on the payphone, and here comes Ozzy Osbourne walking around the corner. I went, "Hey, Ozzy, what's going on?" And he goes, "Hey, mate," and he just kept on walking. And I went, "Wow, that was just Ozzy Osbourne." So same thing with you in the elevator business. You're all over the place. I was down in Atlantic City, and I could do. It's funny sometimes on the podcast if I get in the mood, I start telling elevator stories, getting people out of elevators that are trapped. Things I've worked on, just stories that I've been, because I was in the elevator business for like 25 years.
And you didn't see any more wrestlers didn't come through the door there?
No. No.
Weird,
it was really, yeah. And again, for me, I gotta say, I think I got out of wrestling probably after everybody knew that it wasn't, it was, I'm not going to say it wasn't real. It's staged, because some of that stuff, I mean, those guys get hurt.
Really? Yeah.
I mean,
I got some bad knees for 5 years of jumping off the ring when just being a manager. So I tell you that part of it's real, but that bothered my dad. My dad was on a ferry boat going across from one town to the next. He had been to wrestling, and he was going in the Memphis area. He was crossing the river, Mississippi River, in a ferry boat, and he saw two wrestlers. It was Tojo Yamamoto and Jerry Jarrett at the time, I think, were feuding, but he saw them talking, and that killed him. He said, "I'm done. Wrestling is fake," blah, blah, blah. And then every time I got started watching it, if he was at the house, he would have to tell me that it was fake every time. But he didn't care that I watched it. He never liked it when I would go places and he said I was going to break my neck. My dad was always, the worst thing was going to happen to me when I went out of the house. When I went to concerts, I was going to get a drug overdose, even though I didn't do anything but pot, but I was going to get a drug overdose. But yeah, and by the way, just so you know, John,
your time is up.
All right. Look who we got on the screen here. My best friend.
Your best friend had to show up, BT.
Well, I do appreciate you coming. I didn't know how many people we would get, and I do thank everybody that's in the waiting room waiting. I appreciate that. I don't know how long it's going to go since we don't have but one more person. That's Eugene. I may not be able to put this on as a podcast. This was I try my best. There's two.
You should have saved me for last, because me and you could have filled out the rest.
Well, we could bring you back after, if you stick around. I'll bring you back and it'll be a extended 5 minutes. Real quick, I want to know, you went to the con. There was 3 major Memphis wrestling cons this year. I've been to 2 of them. You've been to 2 of them, 2 different ones. Well, we were together on one here in Jonesboro. Tell me something that surprised you at the Jackson one?
Surprised me. I guess the biggest surprise is there's this guy. When I first got there, this guy was walking up, and he had these cornrows, and he looked kind of familiar, but I couldn't place him, so I thought I was probably seen him out in the crowd at some show somewhere. But I held the door for him, and he went in, and we passed each other several times walking around in there. And a little bit later, I saw Mike Needham, and he's like, "Yeah, man, he's like, you talk to Tony Williams?" And I said, "No, I haven't seen Tony Williams." He's like, "You were right over there by him." I'm like, "No, I wasn't." He's like, "The guy with the cornrows, that's Tony Williams." I go, "Oh, God, that's who that is?" And he goes, "Yeah." I was like, holy crap. And I never did come across him again the rest of the day. But there I had walked past Tony Williams 5 or 6 times and didn't realize it was him. And I hated that. I would have liked to have had a conversation with him. So
y'all had some stuff on the USWA podcast talking about Tony, how good he was. Him and Brian had a match on one of those older shows that y'all review. 1993, is that what we're doing? 1993. And just a great talent. I mean, one of those guys that probably could have done a lot more if there wasn't. I always think about Rey Mysterio being so small that he just opened the door for everybody that size. But he was so good. He was so good.
Oh yeah, he was great. And I'm sure if somehow he's ever seen our podcast, which he probably hasn't, but if he has, because he kept kind of looking at me like, why ain't this dude say anything to me? If he had heard or seen the podcast and heard us put him over, he's probably like, wow, this guy's a jerk. He's not even, trying to talk to me yet. He's talking me up on his stupid podcast. But I didn't know, man.
Anybody else? I saw that picture of you, Josh, and Richard.
Yeah.
And me and you, we're about the same height, probably way similar to the same size men. And then Josh is standing there to your left. He's kind of slimmer, kind of the same height.
That's fair.
Then that fucking monster is standing next to you on the right there. My God, Richard is big. I don't remember him being that big.
Josh's son took like 2 or 3 different pictures, and Richard's head's cut off in every one of them. I think on this week's podcast, I made the joke when we put the picture up on the screen that people were going to be asking me and Josh what the Big Show was doing at the Memphis Fest.
Man, just a big man. I remember seeing some of his first matches and then telling him, look, come here. Let me, I sent him to Derek and them and said, look, fine. And this is funny, but I didn't like Richard. I liked his partner. I said, you can make his partner be a superstar in this area. I don't know about Richard. And then come to find out, Richard was the one with the good attitude, not him. In the, just for the hell of it, in the description of this podcast, I will put all of your stuff so people can go. I tell you, I hate you now because I listen to your USWA podcast, but I am watching USWA wrestling again, which is fun, the old stuff. And I'm listening to the Doug Gilbert podcast, and I've never been a huge fan of Doug Gilbert. And I want to say I was so wrong about how talented this guy was. I think because he was Eddie's brother, and I just never, that's all I heard in my mind. Oh, that's Eddie's brother. And I saw him later on in life do some live shows, and he wouldn't do a lot, but he got a lot of heat. But man, when he was younger, he was working his ass off every time he was on television.
Yeah, man, Doug was a great worker, and he's got a ton of stories, man.
On the interview, on the what you call it, on the microphone, he was the best.
Oh yeah, he was.
Oh, hey, just to let you know,
your time is up.
Live and in living color. We go in 5 minutes here. We're waiting 5 minute time. Oh, she's wearing a gimmick shirt. She's wearing.
I am.
Welcome.
And I'm wearing my name tag.
Oh, I can't remember what it says. What does it say?
STS Council President, Chief Executive Magistrate.
Oh, okay.
It is the highest honor one can be bestowed upon in the Shiznit community. It means that I have an unnecessary and unvalidated amount of control and stock in STS.
Oh, okay.
And it also means that I can call bullshit at any time. Essentially.
I wondered what was going on with that. Good. Now I told you I was going to tell this story on Patreon, but we're going to tell it right here. We've been knowing each other, and I'm horrible with dates, but how long has it been?
God.
We actually met in Rector, Arkansas during LAW Wrestling. It was a small promotion that we went to that had a lot of good wrestlers. It was like all the good wrestlers decided to go there and work.
It was amazing.
And that's where we met.
It was a whole other time. That was like 2007, 2008.
That was before the website. It was during the website. It was during WrestlingRightOnline.com. And then I told you I was going to a show in Jonesboro. You said, hey, I'll meet you at that show. And we had Poker Face was there. We had Scott Hall and Sid Vicious. Unfortunately, we lost both of those guys already, but we were there to see them. And it was me, you, and Ferb, and we was watching wrestling, Frank Martin's promotion, RWA.
Yes.
And you said to me, you said, hey, do you know if Sid's single? And I'm like, I mean, you weren't dating anybody, So I said, I'm like, no, I don't know whether he's single or not. You go ask him if he's single. And I was just like, can you imagine me walking up to Sid Vicious and go, hey, I was just wondering, are you single? And I said, I'm not.
Y'all are tied. Y'all are so tied.
Yeah,
like
since we're tied, I've only met him a couple of times, and one time he said I was a goose. So, and I was just like, no, I'm not doing that. And I always carried a notebook with me where I wrote down. By the way, I've got one. I've actually got one right here. I had a notebook just like this, exactly like this. I wrote down all the results in the notebook, and you told me, I'm not even going to call you the B word, but I almost did. You told me, what did you tell me you was going to do if I didn't go back there and talk to Sid?
He's going to rip up your notebook.
And I almost cried.
You took it with you.
I took the notebook, went backstage with it because I wasn't going to get, and I never did talk to Sid, and you kept bugging me about it over and over and over. Stacey, you've been a wrestling fan for a long time. Do you still watch wrestling? I know you watch Memphis Wrestling every once in a while. Do you watch anything else?
I support local wrestling. I don't follow any of the stuff on TV. Like, I just don't keep up with it. But like, my friends wrestle, and so like I like to watch that. But that's all I watch.
Yeah, I mean that's with me. I still watch the WWE, and I can't quit watching WWE. That's pretty much it. And Memphis Wrestling, and because of Gene, I'm watching old Memphis Wrestling that I've never seen, which is fun. 1993, I had a life. I guess that's what happened. I had a wife, a business, kids, and I quit watching wrestling for a period of time, and just read the Observer. I just read the Observer. I didn't contribute, didn't do anything. And then these guys started doing that podcast, and I was like, I'm just going to follow along. So once a week, I get to watch USWA wrestling from 1993, just like I was when I was a kid, and then I listened to them talk about it. It's like three old friends got together, and I'm sitting listening to them talk about the wrestling like we used to do as a kid. So we used to watch wrestling on Saturdays, and then on Monday during school, that's all we talked about. You know, did you see Memphis Wrestling? Did you see what he did? Did you see what Jerry Lawler did? Did you see it? Did you see
my very first wrestling show was in Dixie, Arkansas, which no longer exists. Apparently the town just doesn't exist anymore.
Stacey,
but it was
Stacey.
Your time is up.
She's still talking. Hey, we're on Patreon. We're on Patreon, by the way, just so everybody knows. Save Bat Time, Save Bat Channel on the best little wrestling podcast in the business. Be there. And as everyone knows, I love my mama. And Gene Jackson's my best friend.
You know it.
On Patreon now. I got 20 minutes. I kind of feel bad that we didn't get but 4 or 5 people participate, but I guess that's better than anything.
That's the first one, right? You know, it takes a little while for people. Most people are going to want to watch it the first time and be like, what the hell is this? But see, they were going to be intimidated because they had to talk for 5 minutes, but they didn't realize you were going to talk for 3 of the 5. So the other person only got to talk for 2.
That's what
I was all fired up. I was going to come here and see freaking Jersey Boy before me was on here telling his elevator stories, and I've got the elevator story of all elevator stories.
Oh, you do have the elevator. Duchess, stick around. So when we get through recording, I'm going to delete Gene out of here and do some work, and me and you can talk while I'm actually start downloading everything. Tell the story for Patreon. I think we've told this story. I think me and
we
you
told
did
it a long time ago on the WrestleCade episode, but just the condensed Reader's Digest version of it. Me and my wife went to WrestleCade. Do you remember 5 years ago? Was something like that? 5-6 years ago?
Hell, I don't know.
And one of the many people we were excited to meet that weekend was Mil Mascaris, the legend. And we get to the hotel on Friday night. We check in. we go to the elevators, and things have already started. We were a little late getting there, so we were going to take our stuff up to our room, then come back down and see the show that was going on. And when we get in the elevator, this guy goes, hold the elevator. And so this Hispanic gentleman in this really loud-looking tracksuit, really unique-looking tracksuit, really stood out. But he looks like, a 60-something-year-old businessman or something, and he steps on, and he's like, number 9, number 9. So we hit number 9, and so me and Rosie have always had this running joke, like over the years, especially like we'd go to Chikara shows and we'd be sitting in our car, and everybody that walked by would be like, "Hey, that's Hallowicked," or "Hey, that's Ultra."
Right.
Like, oh, it's not. They don't have their mask on. So when we got off the elevator, I told Rosie, I said, "Yeah, that's Mil Mascaris," and she started laughing. She's like, "Yeah, wouldn't that be funny?" So the next morning, we're getting ready to go down for the shindig, and I'm scrolling through my phone, and one of the vendors has a picture from the night before, and it says, Mil Mascaris has arrived. And it's the Mil Mascaris mask, but it's that freaking tracksuit that he was wearing in the elevator. And I showed Rosie to go, holy crap, that was freaking Mil Mascaris. And she's like, shit, we met Mil Mascaris without his mask. And, everybody's made such a spectacle about, oh, he took a shower with his mask on. He never went anywhere without his mask. So we saw him. I didn't click a picture with him.
Just so you know, I never took a shower with my mask on.
Did you not?
No, I didn't. And I heard that reference to the BT Express the other day on your podcast.
You're welcome.
There was there was another BT Express, which was one of the reasons I called myself BT Express, because of all the trouble that Billy Travis was in. But my name is Brian Tramel. But
that worked out.
That worked out really easy, and that
was the more famous BT Express.
Yeah, I could have been, Nature Boy Express. So there we go. All right, man. I'm gonna end it. I'm gonna end the stream so I can put it up in the morning real early. I appreciate you coming on, Gene. I really do.
Yeah,
Thank you to everybody. Thank you to Patreon.